Welcome on board, chosen one. You feel that shift in the air, don't you? That strange heaviness pressing against your chest, like the atmosphere changed overnight. It's not anxiety. It's not paranoia. It's the universe confirming what you've been sensing for weeks now. Someone with real power just did something most people spend their entire lives waiting for. They backed your story. Not with empty words or social media likes, but with the kind of validation that sends shockwaves through systems. And trust me when I say this, your enemies felt it before you did. Because here's what actually happened while you were minding your business, healing in silence, and rebuilding yourself in the shadows. A high-level player, someone whose voice carries weight in rooms you've never entered, someone whose opinion reshapes narratives and redirects energy, looked at the evidence. They examined your journey. They reviewed what was said about you versus what you actually did. And they made a decision that just flipped the entire script. They publicly or privately aligned themselves with your truth. And that alignment just became the earthquake your opposition has been dreading. You weren't supposed to have this kind of backup. They made sure of that. They isolated you, discredited you, spread whispers designed to poison any potential alliances before they could form. They wanted you alone, undefended, easy to dismiss. But what they didn't calculate was that truth has its own gravity. It pulls the right people at the right time. And now someone they can't ignore, someone they can't dismiss, someone whose credibility is bulletproof, just stood in your corner. The legend needs to bow. Let's not waste time. Hit that like button, subscribe, and drop a comment if you've been waiting for this moment your entire life. This isn't just content. This is your vindication being streamed in real time. Now we continue. Let's break down exactly why your enemies are losing sleep right now. Let's expose what this backing actually means and why the power structure around you just cracked wide open. Because once a high-level player validates your story, everything that came before it gets rewritten. Every lie gets questioned. Every dismissal gets reviewed. Every person who stood against you suddenly has to explain themselves. And explanation is the language of the guilty. Here's what they're panicking about right now. When someone at the top backs your story, they're not just agreeing with you, they're creating a new official record. Think about it like this. You've been screaming into the void for months, maybe years, telling your truth to anyone who would listen. Most people smiled politely, nodded, and then returned to whatever comfortable lies they preferred to believe. Your truth was inconvenient. It disrupted the narrative they built their lives around, so they filed it away under the category of things we'll pretend didn't happen. But now, a high-level player just pulled that file off the shelf, held it up to the light, and said out loud what everyone was afraid to admit. This person was right. The moment that statement lands, history starts rewriting itself in real time. Suddenly, all those people who called you dramatic, sensitive, delusional, or attention-seeking have to reconcile their judgment with someone whose opinion they can't disrespect. They have to confront the fact that maybe they weren't as smart as they thought. Maybe they weren't as insightful. Maybe they were just comfortable cowards who chose the easy narrative over the true one. Your enemies know what this means. It means their version of events is now under investigation. It means every word they said about you is being replayed and re-examined by people who matter. It means their credibility, which they built on your silence and isolation, is suddenly on trial. And here's the beautiful part. They can't attack this player the way they attacked you. This person has armor you didn't have, resources you couldn't access, influence that makes direct confrontation career suicide. So instead of fighting, they're doing something far more telling. They're backtracking, quietly deleting old posts, softening their language, suddenly acting like they never really had a strong opinion about you in the first place. But the internet never forgets. Screenshots exist. Memories are long, and the people who witnessed their behavior are now watching them scramble like roaches when the kitchen light flips on. This isn't just vindication for you, this is exposure for them. And exposure at this level doesn't heal with time. It stains, it follows. It becomes the story people tell when someone asks why that person can't be trusted. Your truth just became their permanent record. Let's talk about what credibility actually means in spaces where perception is power. You could scream your truth from the rooftops every single day, and most people would still question it. Not because your truth isn't valid, but because you didn't have the social currency to make it undeniable. That's the brutal reality of how systems work. Truth without power is just noise, but power backing truth becomes a force that reshapes entire environments, and that's exactly what just happened. This high-level player didn't just believe you, they leveraged their credibility on your behalf. They took the reputation they spent years building and used it as collateral for your story. That's not a casual gesture, that's a calculated risk that only happens when someone is absolutely certain about the facts. Think about what that means. It means they did their homework, they verified, they cross-referenced. They looked at the evidence from every angle and concluded that your version of events isn't just plausible, it's accurate. And now their credibility, which carries weight in rooms where decisions get made, is attached to yours. Your enemies are sweating because they know what happens next. Anyone who wants to discredit you now has to go through this player first. They have to explain why someone with nothing to gain and everything to lose would publicly back a liar. They have to justify why their judgment should be trusted over someone whose track record is spotless. And here's where it gets messy for them. They can't. There's no good answer. Any attack on you now looks like an attack on this player's judgment. And attacking someone at that level is a war most people aren't equipped to fight. So instead they're doing damage control, reaching out to mutual connections, testing the temperature of rooms they used to dominate, asking careful questions designed to gauge whether their influence is still intact. And what they're discovering is chilling. The rooms that used to echo their opinions are now silent. The people who used to nod along with their version of events are now reconsidering. The narrative they spent months crafting is unraveling thread by thread. And all it took was one person with real power saying the quiet part out loud. This story doesn't add up, and I'm standing with the person who's been telling the truth. What's happening right now isn't just about you and your enemies. It's about everyone who's been watching from the sidelines, afraid to take a position, waiting to see which way the wind blows. Those people just got their answer. The high-level player made the first move, and in group dynamics, the first move from someone credible creates permission for everyone else to follow. That's the ripple effect your opposition didn't see coming. People who stayed silent out of fear are now finding their courage. The ones who knew your story was true but didn't want to risk their reputation by saying so publicly are now speaking up. They're sliding into DMs, leaving comments, sharing their own experiences that validate yours. They're adding their voices to a chorus that's growing louder by the hour, and every new voice makes it harder for your enemies to maintain their version of reality. This is the snowball effect. It starts with one high-level endorsement and builds into an avalanche of validation that buries opposition under the weight of collective truth. Your enemies are panicking because they're watching their control slip away in real time. They thought they owned the narrative. They thought their version of events was locked in, sealed, permanent. But narratives are only as strong as the silence that protects them. And that silence just shattered. Now everyone who participated in discrediting you is being named. Not always directly, but in that careful way people use when they want plausible deniability. Comments like, "I always wondered about that situation," or "It's interesting how some people reacted." Those seemingly innocent observations are actually grenades. They're forcing everyone in the circle to reconsider their stance. And here's what makes this unstoppable. Once the truth gains momentum, trying to stop it only makes you look more guilty. Your enemies know this. They've seen it happen to others. They've watched people try to fight against a truth wave only to get crushed by it. So now they're faced with an impossible choice. Do they double down on their lies and risk being exposed even harder? Or do they quietly fade into the background and hope everyone forgets their role? Either way, they lose. Because the truth, backed by credible power, doesn't negotiate. It doesn't compromise. It just keeps expanding until there's no room left for the lies. Let me explain something crucial about power dynamics. When a high-level player backs your story, they're not just offering emotional support. They're transferring a portion of their social capital to you. That transfer is a permanent upgrade. It's not something that can be taken back. It's not something your enemies can undo. Because now, when people think about you, they don't just see you, they see you plus the credibility of everyone who stands behind you. And that's a completely different equation. Think about how the world treated you before this moment. You were easy to dismiss, easy to gaslight, easy to paint as unreliable or biased or too emotional. But now, every time someone tries those tactics, they have to contend with the fact that a respected authority figure disagrees with them. Your story isn't just your word anymore. It's backed by someone whose judgment people trust. And that shifts everything. Conversations that used to end with, "Well, that's just your perspective," now end with, "But this respected person confirmed it's true." What's your response to that? Your enemies have no good response. That's why they're sweating. They built their whole defense on making you seem unreliable. They invested time and energy into painting you as someone whose word couldn't be trusted. And in one move, that entire strategy became worthless, because credibility is transitive. When someone credible vouches for you, their credibility extends to you. And now, you're operating from a position of strength they never expected you to reach. The playing field didn't just level, it tilted in your favor. And here's where it gets even better. This power shift affects every interaction moving forward. People who used to talk over you now have to listen. People who used to dismiss your concerns now have to take them seriously. People who used to treat you like you were invisible now have to acknowledge your presence. Because ignoring someone backed by a high-level player sends a message to that player. And nobody wants to send the message that they don't respect someone's judgment. So instead, they adjust. They recalibrate. They start treating you with the respect you should have received all along. Your enemies spent months trying to bury your story under layers of confusion, misdirection, and alternative narratives. They hoped that if they made the truth complicated enough, people would give up trying to understand it and just accept the simplest version they were offered. That strategy works when the truth has no champion, but now it has one. And not just any champion. A high-level player with the resources, platform, and credibility to cut through the noise and present the facts clearly. This is their nightmare scenario. Because the truth, when presented by someone with authority, becomes undeniable. All the carefully constructed lies, the strategic omissions, the gaslighting, the victim blaming, it all becomes transparent when someone with no stake in the game looks at the evidence and says what actually happened. Your enemies can't fight that. They can't spin it. They can't reframe it. The truth is now the official story, and their version has been demoted to what it always was: fiction. What's driving them insane right now is the permanence of it. This isn't a social media moment that will blow over in a week. This is a validation that becomes part of your permanent record. Every time your name comes up in conversation, this backing will be mentioned. Every time someone tries to discredit you, they'll have to explain why a high-level player disagreed. Every time your story is told, it will be told with the credibility of someone whose opinion carries weight. That's the kind of validation that changes trajectories. And your enemies know it. They're watching opportunities close. They're seeing doors that used to be open to them suddenly require more scrutiny. They're feeling the cold shoulder from people who used to be allies, because nobody wants to be associated with the losing side of a truth war. Nobody wants to be remembered as the person who stood against someone who was right. So they're doing what people always do when the tide turns against them. They're trying to rewrite their own history, claiming they never really opposed you that strongly, insisting they always had questions about the official narrative, pretending they were on the fence the whole time. But the receipts exist. The messages are saved. The witnesses remember. And now that the truth has a champion, those receipts are being compiled into a case that can't be defended. Your enemies are sweating because they're realizing too late that they bet on the wrong side. They gambled their reputation on your silence holding, and they lost. Here's what your enemies don't understand yet, but are about to learn the hard way. When a high-level player backs your story, they're not just making a statement about the past. They're creating momentum for the future. That backing becomes a foundation for everything that comes next. Other people with influence start paying attention. Opportunities that were closed suddenly open. Doors that were locked start swinging wide. Because credibility attracts credibility. Power recognizes power. And validation from one respected source creates a cascade of validation from others. Your opposition is about to watch you rise in ways they can't prevent. They're going to see you gain access to spaces they thought you'd never reach. They're going to witness you form alliances with people they couldn't touch. They're going to watch your influence grow while theirs shrinks. And the most painful part for them will be knowing they caused this. Their attacks on you created the conditions for this backing to matter. Their attempts to isolate you made this validation more powerful. Their lies made the truth more devastating when it finally came out. They created their own worst nightmare. And now they have to live in it. Because once the truth has momentum, it doesn't stop. It compounds. Every day, more people learn what really happened. Every week, another piece of their narrative crumbles. Every month, their credibility takes another hit, and all they can do is watch. Because fighting it now would only make it worse. Denying it would only prove they're still lying. Doubling down would only accelerate their downfall. So they're stuck. Trapped between the truth they tried to bury and the consequences they can't escape. And the sweetest part? You didn't have to do anything except survive. You didn't have to plot revenge. You didn't have to orchestrate their downfall. You just had to hold on to your truth long enough for the right person to recognize it. And that person just arrived with all the power and credibility they bring. Your story is now unstoppable. Your enemies are now watching everything they built on lies collapse around them. And this is only the beginning. So here you are, chosen one. standing at the center of a truth that refused to die, backed by someone whose word carries more weight than all the lies your enemies told combined. The validation you've been waiting for didn't come from the masses. It came from someone who matters, someone whose endorsement changes everything. And now your enemies are learning the hardest lesson anyone can learn. You can't fight the truth forever. Eventually, it finds an ally strong enough to break through every wall you built. This moment isn't just vindication, it's transformation. You're no longer the person they tried to silence. You're the person they couldn't break. You're the story they couldn't bury. You're the truth they couldn't outrun. And now, everyone knows it. If this message resonated with you the way it was meant to, show the universe you're ready for what comes next. Hit that like button, subscribe to this channel, and drop 777 inches the comments to signal that you're done being underestimated. Share this with anyone who needs to know that truth always finds its champion. Your enemies are sweating, and honestly, they should be.